Today on the Rise of the Challenge podcast.
And so when you develop the discipline to do what you need to do, and it's all inside of, say, a bodybuilding preparation or training or whatever it is, and you take that discipline and you apply it to other parts of your life, other parts of your life are a joke. It's easy. Because, life in general, if you think about it, like with bodybuilding or any of these sports, what you're doing is you're trying to move forward. And you're always trying to get better, but you're also looking for the mistakes that you made to not repeat them again.
Welcome to the Rise of the Challenge podcast. Joined today, he's a business owner, professional strongman, bodybuilder, and pro wrestler. It's Jon Andersen. How you doing today, Jon?
I'm doing great, brother. How are you? Thanks for having me.
We're so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what you like doing growing up.
Well, ultimately, I was just I guess the best part of my story is you look at me now and you see the pro bodybuilder, you see the pro wrestler, you see the pro strongman, you see the seven-figure business owner, you see the guy who does all this stuff, but what you don't know is that I was a really challenged youngster, like challenged to the point where I was not even in the normal classes challenged. Like I was like put into classes where like they had kids with like real mental disabilities were on the other side of the room. And so the joke that I make is that I was just dumb enough to believe I could do it. And when you believe, you can achieve. And so the fact that I had these challenges, and I still have them. It's not like I got rid of them. I just used them to my strengths. The fact that I couldn't read worth a shit, I still have a challenge. I still have challenges reading. I can read, but it's, part of my challenge. It's part of my dyslexia. I have a hard time when it comes right down to it. All of the things that were supposed to hold me back turned out to be my biggest blessing. So I was a normal kid. I liked, I wasn't like I was abused. I had no problems. I just was some shit in my head just wasn't quite wired properly. Like my older brothers were smart. And then there was me. And so, I like to ride dirt bikes. I played sports. I just had a really difficult time, keeping my head above water, so to speak. So anyway, through me learning to work extra hard to just be average. Mm-hmm. That was it. That if you right there, I learned to work hard. I had to do things twice as much, twice as often, twice as hard, twice as long, twice as everything, just to be average. And then once I started to realize that, okay, this is normal to you and it's average. Well, once I got in the real world and I started to apply all of this to the stuff that really was like my passion, holy Toledo, I moved ahead so fast, it was unbelievable. So, I'll tell you, when it comes to, I love the title of your show.
Thank you.
When it comes down to it, a challenge is, if you look inside that challenge, that's where life begins. If you look at that side, that challenge, that's where you're going to make your progress. If you look inside that challenge, that's where the juice is. You got to head straight for the challenges. You need to face fear, face failure. One of the things that I learned when I was young, well, I shouldn't say it. I learned, didn't even know I was learning it, but I was just constantly failing. I was doing the best I could, but I was failing. And I really kind of I guess I wasn't afraid of failure because it happened so much. Most people never get over that. Yeah. And so because they're afraid of failure, they'll run from it. Well, I had to run to it. And once I started to realize that my formula of running to failure was so advanced, I was like, holy shit. I was even a porky little son of a bitch. So the fat little dumb shit actually figured out a highly effective formula to just absolutely crush goals in front of them. And so I'll tell you, for all you listeners out there, anything that you think might have been, put in front of you, like, why did this happen to me? Life is happening for you, not to you. You just got to realize that all those difficulties, all those challenges, all those uphill battles are exactly what you need to get what you want. You become better from overcoming the challenges, And because you become better, you can achieve more. And it's such a backwards train of thought. Most people will run from it when you actually need to be running to it.
And when I introduced you, I basically listed off your resume in a way, but each of those items have their own unique challenges, as it's
Oh yeah.
something that someone is, oh, I can do this easily. You're training, you're working to get to that peak performance. Where did you know that this was kind of the direction you wanted to go with your athletic performance, your physique, the training to be a wrestler, bodybuilding? Where was that first kind of itch that you got to get into that?
You know, it was the first time when I was, as I said, I was kind of a little dumb shit. You know, I had a hard time in school. So my mom was smart enough to realize, okay, we can't put a TV in front of this kid. We'll have a much worse problem. So there was no TV in the house. So I never got to watch TV. And I say never, I'm talking never. Like I wasn't even allowed to go to friends' houses if they watched lots of TV, because she knew I would watch all the TV, and that was not going to help the challenges I was, that I was trying to overcome. And so somewhere along the lines, every once in a while I'd get to watch a movie here and there. It was just like the most amazing thing. I'm sure it was probably similar to like when people saw TV for the first time. That's kind of how I reacted, because I never got to see it. Well, I saw Conan the Barbarian. Every once in a while, I'd get like they would say, "Hey, let's do this. You've done really well." They'd give me this reward. We watched Conan the Barbarian, and I remember so vividly. Arnold is pushing that big thing. It's a big thing around a circle. And I'd never, ever, ever seen a dude with muscles like that. And it was like something in my chest just went bam, just like that. It just changed. And I didn't know what it was. It was pretty confusing to me. And it made me a little anxious, but I knew that I wanted to do that. And I didn't even know what that was. I just knew I was so blown away. And then I realized that I wanted to be like him, not in the movies. I just was so moved by the way he looked, the big, strong muscles, and probably in some way, shape, or form, it had something to do with like soothing the inner part of the inner little fat boy in me that was always getting picked on. If I was this big, strong guy, I'd be whooping the ass of the dudes on the bus who are spitting in my face type stuff. But it was like deep. It was deep. And that's where it started. And granted, I was still looking for the answers in the bottom of the cookie jar because I didn't know how to do it, didn't know what to do. And I used food as a comforting system, because every time I'd have a real rough day at school, I'd get picked on or whatever it was, I would run to food to comfort me. And so once that stuck with me, I never left. And as I started to play sports, bam, I'm 52. So this was decades ago. We're talking what? Holy Toledo. We're talking 30 years ago, 35 years ago. You had to lift weights if you wanted to play sports. You lifted weights for PE because they wanted you to be safe. And then I quickly realized that I was actually better at lifting weights than I was the sports I was playing. And I it's almost like everything started to happen like, holy Toledo, I'm starting to get bigger. I'm getting stronger. And it was like, that's when it really hit me. I was like, okay, you're good at something for the first time. And it totally aligns with this thing in your chest. You get it now. And the only thing I got was I knew what I wanted. And it was like I felt like what I wanted and what I was actually doing started to finally line up. And that's when it really hit me. I was like, I would be in the gym. I would skip school to go to the gym. Even though I had 3 periods of weightlifting, I would still skip school to go to the gym. And it was like I was finally good at something. And it was so special to me. And I loved it. I mean, I still love it. But back then it was like a love affair. I mean, you couldn't. And my mom was like, obviously I was challenged in many ways. And I was a fat little boy. So she's like, he's applying himself to something constructive. Let him go. And then obviously, I ended up getting to college, putting me in a small private school. Again, it worked my butt off. And I graduated actually with a major in theology, minor in philosophy. And when I came out of college, I mean, my mom at that point was starting to worry because I had taken this weightlifting thing so far. I was spending so much time in the gym. I was doing just enough of school to get by, although I still had to work really hard at it. Now, all of a sudden, she viewed it as an obsession. Like, okay, this is taking over his life.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't care. I had no intention of getting out of college and going to get a job. I just wanted to continue what I was doing. I had no idea I was going to make money. But when I checked out of college, I was about 260 pounds and I was cock strong, dude. I was the strongest. I could go to any gym. Back in those days, there's no internet. So it'd be like you'd hear about you, hey, there's this strong guy over this gym. Well, you'd like get together and you just would start kicking ass together, but you're really battling it out. Who's the strongest? It was some intense shit. And I would whip everybody's ass. It was like I looked big, but I was so much stronger than I looked. And that's when I realized, okay, you're going to have to, you're ready to go. And so that's when I started competing as strongman. And that was my first career. And, you know, it's when it came down to it, all of my challenges made me a problem solver because I had to figure out ways to do shit my way. I couldn't get the information out of the books. So I would have to join study groups to get the information. I the college level books. I wasn't reading them because I didn't understand them. I could read it aloud. I could read it to you, but I had no idea what I was saying. So when I graduated college, I had no intention to get a job. So I just kept starting businesses, and many of them were failing, but I was trying. I wasn't going to get a job. I refused to do it. Like, funny enough, I started a meal prep service. This was in 1992, which was way ahead of its time.
Yep.
And it actually was doing pretty well. It's just the logistics killed me. Obviously, there was, I was driving these meals around, and it just eventually just didn't work. But so I finally ended up starting a business, and it took off, and I ended up selling it I built it up for 5 years, sold it for $500,000. And shit, I'm into my, how old was I? Like late 20s. Not many dudes doing that. No. Not to mention dudes doing that had a hard time reading the fucking newspaper. So you see that I'd become so good at problem solving and making forward progress. It was like all of that shit, all the challenges I had to rise to when I was young just made me so much better at what I was doing. Life just became my playground, man. The world is my playground because I can sit down at almost any table and I look in the eyes of other men and I know I will outwork them. There are very few men on the planet that I've met that I look in their eyes and I'm like, okay, this might be a son of a bitch, I mean, I only personally know of two that I would give the title to, only because they've done it longer than me. They're older and they've done it longer. But, when it comes down to it, it's again, right back to the name of your show, brother. All the challenges that I had to overcome is what made me me. Most people would love to have one of the three careers I had in athletics. Most people would love to have sold a business for $500K. Most people would love to have multiple seven-figure businesses. I got them all. Yep. And I'm not trying to sit here and stroke my own shaft. I'm just saying that it's because I was forced to overcome a lot of shit. I became good. And when I say good, that's just a generalized statement. Put something in front of me, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to solve that problem. And when you can solve problems, you get what you want.
They always say the challenges you face bring the best out of people. They kind of show the characteristics that they never knew they had in them. And it kind of showed for you that you found these areas, these attributes that really have excelled you to learn a lot about what you can do best and how you can achieve anything that you want and how you worked hard to get to where you are.
Brother, it's all right here. I'm going to give you an example. So most people know what a squat is, right? Mm-hmm. Well, most people know when you're squatting, you're inside in a cage and there's catch racks. It's very safe. So if you lose the weight, you don't get smashed, right? Okay. Why? Because people are afraid of failing. They don't want to fall down with the weight because they think they're going to get hurt. So the whole thing is set up not to fail, right? Mm-hmm. I flipped the script. I said, okay, I'm going to take massive amounts of weights. I used to do this with 700 pounds. I put the hooks on the outside of the cage. So the bar was on the outside, nothing on the inside. I would tell my spotters to get the hell away from me. And I would walk 700 pounds out. There's nothing around, no support, no nothing. And I would squat that weight with zero intention of putting it back on the rack. I knew ahead of time I was going to fail. The question is, if I'm going to pay this price, do I get one more rep this week? And when you start to pursue failure, you set up what you're doing with the idea that, yes, I'm going to fail. Mm-hmm. You get good so fast. Most people are afraid to fail because they're more worried about what people are going to think about them because they failed. Holy Christ. Failure is it's a piece of the equation of success. You can't bake a goddamn cake without some butter. You can't have success without failure. But people are afraid of what others are. Oh my God, so-and-so is going to think I failed. Good. That's what it takes. And so-and-so thinks it's bad to fail because look at him. He's sitting over there working at 7-Eleven. Mm-hmm. You know, no offense to anybody that works at 7-Eleven, but you know what I mean? Most people that will deter you from failing or deter you from setting a big goal or pursuing something that seems to them impossible, they're afraid. And as soon as you realize that, you have to run to it. Stop running from it. Life changes so fast. I mean, unbelievably fast. And then when you pursue failure, it doesn't make a difference how many times. I still get scared when I pursue failure. Still. But the good part is that fear is highly, highly motivating. There's no better motivator on the planet than fear. When you get that little pit in your stomach, you're willing to do at that moment what you would not do prior to experiencing that fear. And it goes all the way down to the brain chemicals. Your brain releases a compound called cortisol, which is a fight or flight drug. It's basically, okay, am I going to run or am I going to fight? Mm-hmm. Fear provokes that. And it's almost like getting a drug. Your brain gives you a drug to go to battle. Come on. Who doesn't want that? But if I'm going to be in a fight, yeah, give me some shit that's going to help me, you know? And so but you see what I'm saying? People run away from this stuff. No, you got to run to it. And it sounds easy. And, you know, I shouldn't say it sounds easy. It's easier for me to say, and it's easier for people to hear. But the first time is going to be really difficult. But the first one is always the worst. The second's easier, third's easier than that. So to the audience, what I would say, when you're rising to the challenge, when you find that obstacle in front of you, recognize there's failure involved, embrace it, soak up that fear, get that pit in your gut and attack. And it's okay to fail. Just don't quit. That's it. If you take those principles and you put them in play, you will get what you want. It's that simple. Just a matter of time.
Did you see an easy transition from bodybuilding and how you were working out with there to how you were as a wrestler with the size that you were?
Every time I made a transition, I was laughed at. Every time I made a transition, people told me I was crazy. You know, I basically had a back surgery at the end of my strongman career. My agent basically talked to the surgeon and said, hey, if he goes back in the circuit, he's going to be back on the surgery table before the season's over. So my agent says to me, this is point blank, if you want me to continue to represent you, we need to place you somewhere else. And I was like, holy shit, okay, what do we do? He said wrestling. I was like, what? I'm not even a fan, man. But then when I started, you know, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm just doing it because this is what I do. I'm not afraid. I just attack. Well, the people around me thought I was smoking crack, but they think I'm smoking crack no matter what I'm doing because they don't understand how I look at things. And I guess here's the way to put it. If if people understand my goals, they're not big enough.
Mhm.
When people hear my goals, they think, excuse my language, this fucking guy's crazy. That tells me I'm thinking properly. If people understand, if people think, oh, you probably do that, I'm missing the boat because I'm not going to be motivated and get up at 4 a.m. when something's easy. So every time I transition from strongman to wrestling, I was told I couldn't do it. I mean, I was told I couldn't be a professional strongman on the circuit too. I was told, oh, you're strong in the gym, but you're not strong like that. Okay, well, let's see. You might be right, but I'm going to try. When I transitioned from strongman to wrestling, same thing. What are you doing? You're at the top of your game over here. Why are you leaving to go over here? Well, this is my choice. You're not going to make that. Those guys have been working on being wrestlers for 10, 12, 13 years. You've never done it before. You might be right, but I'm going to try. Then when I transitioned from wrestling to bodybuilding, same thing. I was 42 years old when I started my bodybuilding career. Yeah, 42. And I went to my first contest, won, qualified for nationals, won. My third ever bodybuilding contest was on a pro stage. At that time, I had turned 43. So, but again, you can't do that. Nobody at 42 gets their pro card, especially that quickly. Again, it's the bigger the challenge, the happier I am.
With these individual kind of things that you were doing, bodybuilding, pro strong, wrestling, did you kind of get to have the fun with it where traveling to all these different places that you
Oh, brother.
do? Like,
Oh, brother.
did you enjoy
Oh,
that kind of aspect also?
oh God. I mean, when you're doing it, you're trying to continue to get better. So looking back, I probably could have had more fun, but I was having a ton of fun. I realized how lucky I was. And half of the fun is like, goddamn walking out in front of 50,000 people in Tokyo Dome. I mean, it's scary at the time, but when that match is over, you are having fun, man. It's like the whole the whole experience of it all. I mean, there's the challenging, there's the difficult parts of all of it, but it's like it's at that point all of the pain, all the anguish, all the suffering feels good because you're doing something that you dreamed about.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter if it hurts. It doesn't matter that you had to, I remember there was a time where Team USA, we had to go to it was really, really deep in Ukraine. And somehow one of our connections got missed. And it took us by the time we got there, we had been traveling for like 40 hours. Brutal. I mean, trying to catch little bits of sleep here and there. And then we were the first group up the next day. We were supposed to have a day off once we arrived, but we spent that day traveling. And 8 o'clock in the morning, we're just wiped out. But it's like, yes, this sucks. And it could have been better, but holy shit. When we were 5, did we think we were going to be doing this? Hell
Nope.
no. Let's go. Let's go. And then the crazy part is pretty much in all of my careers, and like in strongman, all of my teammates, these guys were like D1 athletes that never made it in their sport. I didn't have that. Shit, I was just barely good enough in high school to play. And same thing with when I went to wrestling. I mean, this thing is filled with like guys that made it to NFL and got cut after a year. you know and then in bodybuilding it's a little different than that because those a lot of bodybuilders tend to be a little shorter, but all of these dudes that I was competing with had just been amazing their whole lives, and that wasn't me. So I'm looking around going, God damn, it was the fat little boy. I mean, this is, I was so like, remember I told you about this? Well, it God come down and said to me, put your hand on the table, take this meat cleaver in your hand, cut off one of your fingers, and you could be a pro strongman. I'd have cut it off because that's how bad I wanted it. And he said, okay, do it again, and you can be a pro bodybuilder. I'd have done it again. He said, okay, one more for a wrestling career. I'd have three. I'd be walking around like this if I was given the choice to know that I would have it. Thank God I didn't have that option. I had to work for it because I got all my fingers now. But that's how bad I wanted it. And because I wanted it so bad, it was my passion. It was my purpose. I made it happen. It didn't matter where I started. It mattered what I was willing to do along the way. So all those guys that had those amazing talents, those D1ers and all the guys that were NFLers for a year before they got cut, you know, it's almost like you add up all the minutes of work. You know, I had put in so much more that it allowed me to catch them.
With bodybuilding, sometimes a lot of people get the misconception of, oh, you're going to look big, you're going to be. But what is the biggest thing that a person training like a bodybuilder, mentally, physically, emotionally, that can benefit them outside of training?
So you're asking, what is it about bodybuilding that allows you, what parts allows you to be successful outside?
Yes, because a lot of times people think, well, I'm training to be a bodybuilder, I'm going to look big. But there's a lot to the training that people don't realize that you're taking from that world, but bringing it to your everyday life. What are kind
Yeah.
of the things that you take in your everyday life from what you train?
Well, I mean, first thing you got to understand is that bodybuilding, you can even say with all this stuff, bodybuilding, strongman, wrestling, or any sort of high level sport or entertainment, there is a massive amount of repetition that goes into this. Massive. And when you learn to do something over and over and over, and sometimes it can be boring, but the way to love that monotony. And and if you can't find a way to love it one day, you do it anyway. And so when you develop the discipline to do what you need to do, and it's all inside of, say, a bodybuilding preparation or training or whatever it is, and you take that discipline and you apply it to other parts of your life, other parts of your life are a joke. It's easy because, you know, life in general, I mean, if you think about it, like with bodybuilding or any of these sports, what you're doing is you're trying to move forward and you're always trying to get better, but you're also looking for the mistakes that you made to not repeat them again.
Mm-hmm.
And that element right there, if a person just in normal life would look, okay, what's the biggest mistake I made today? I don't want to make that tomorrow. If a person would just do that one thing, they would be so blown away at how quickly they would make progress just in general life. But the average man will take two or three mistakes and he'll repeat them so many times in his life, they keep him from progressing. So sometimes it's not about doing more. It's about eliminating just a few of the dumb things that you're doing on a daily basis. You know, that guy that comes home and drinks a six pack, you know, there's nothing productive coming out of it. And whether it's drink a six pack or lays on the couch or whatever it is, if you can find those areas of your life that you're kind of wasting your life and you can be productive with them, life changes real quick. And I try to keep, I mean, that's one thing I do is I coach and I mentor. That's like literally that is at the end of all of this, I realized that my true calling was if I can do it, that I can teach anyone how to do it.
Yep.
And one of the things that I preach, it's all mental. It starts mental. But one of the things that I preach is you've got to look at what you're doing, and are you truly looking at the mistakes you're making, and are you truly making an effort not to repeat those mistakes? Even if you can't get it done, if you're aware and you're putting in effort, life will change, and it's crazy. People come to me to get, they want to get in shape. And all I really will do is get their mind right. Because once their mind's right, all the other stuff is easy. If you don't have the mental fortitude to, carry out the little things in your life, how are you going to have the mental fortitude to add more responsibility into your life? You got to handle life first. And if life's handled, okay, now we'll put a couple extra responsibilities on top of that. And that all starts with this.
The final question I'll ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
That's a great question, brother. God damn it. I'm going to have to try to be careful not to let this one run for about 10 minutes in my answer. I'll keep it simple. Number one, don't listen to the people who tell you you can't. And if they're telling you you can't, that's a good thing, because they don't tell somebody, the shit talkers, they don't go after the people that are normal. They go after the people that are trying to do something extraordinary. And so when you're overcoming a challenge, there are going to be so many people that are going to tell you you can't because they're too afraid to try themselves. Don't listen. And if you do listen, realize that you're on the right track. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, you realize that challenges and overcoming challenges, you're going to have to fail to do it, but it's okay. Here's this saying right here can change your life. It is okay to fail. Just don't quit. Because you're not a failure when you try and you fail. You're a failure when you try and you quit. So fail, try, fail, try. You're in the process of being successful. Fail, quit, you're a failure. So just continue to try. And the last thing, fear is going to be coupled with this failing thing. Embrace it. It's going to help you get what you want. So number one, don't listen to the shit talkers. And if you do hear their voices, embrace them. Realize, okay, they're not talking about someone who's, only talk about the people who are really trying to do something special. Number two, realize failure is part of the process. You're not a failure if you continue to try. Number three, when that fear joins the party, use it to your advantage, because when you're scared and you're uncomfortable, you're willing to do what you wouldn't do when you're not scared. And these three simple things will help anyone rise to the challenge.
Jon, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we are excited to see what the future looks like for you.
And brother, on that level, I love to inspire people. So if you could drop the link for my Instagram in your show notes, every day I go in there and I will answer every question. So point blank, if you want to say hello, you want to ask me a question, you want me to give you some little motivational piece because you're getting fired up to do what you're going to do, drop in, say hello. I will respond. Yes, it is me. My Instagram, my name is spelled a little different. So it's Jon is Jon and Andersen is Andersen. So it's at the Jon Andersen. And brother, if you could make sure that link's in the show notes for your followers, I'll be happy to connect with them and help them rise to the challenge.
Tune in next time to hear my next guest talk about their rise to the challenge. Remember to follow, subscribe on all major audio platforms, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel to get full length episode in video format. What path do you take to accomplish your goals? You decide.